Mommispace, a place where you can remember who you are in the midst of it all. This podcast gives moms of all stages a voice to share their experiences and the truth that there is no right way to mom. Welcome back to Mommispace. This is Bree, and today I'm here with Amanda Wissman. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. We actually got connected on Instagram and through Aubrey as well, just that contact. But you had posted something about Mommispace, and it was just so genuine and so kind and sweet. And I was like, who is this lady? We've got to connect. So I'm just so thrilled to have you on the show to share your motherhood journey and all that goodness. But before we kind of dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, where you're located, and what daily life looks like.
Okay, sure. So as you heard, my name's Amanda. My husband and I, his name is Sean. We just celebrated our 13th anniversary in June.
Congratulations.
I know.
Wow.
Thank you. And we have two little boys. Our first little guy, his name is Judah. He's 5, he'll be 6 in October, and he's the redhead.
Yes. Oh, he's so
cute. He's such a spunky kid, and he's very just creative. He's musical, he's imaginative, and he's a really cool kid, but he's also just like his mom. He has some really huge emotions. So it's a good thing that opposites attract, because his dad, my husband, he's very down to earth. And so when we kind of get escalating, he's like, hey guys, come back down to earth. Let's chill out. So he's a good peacemaker. But yeah, like I said, he's a cool kid. He's taught me so much just about grace and patience. And he's taught me a ton about love. I mean, once we move on, we move on. We're good. And then we have another little guy. His name is Titus. And he just turned 2 on Wednesday, 2 days ago. So
precious.
I know.
Wow.
So they couldn't be any more different. Titus is so chill. He just kind of sits back and takes it all in. And it was kind of a challenge at first, because especially when he started to get his own little personality, we found ourselves going, wow, Judah never did that. Or, Judah did this, Judah did that. Just unintentionally comparing them, more just out of shock because they were so different.
Wow.
But one day we kind of caught ourselves, and we just had to go hey, let's take a step back. They're each their own little person, and just kind of enjoy who each of them were.
Yeah.
And it's fun because now that Titus is getting bigger, we kind of give them more space to do their brother thing. So we let them kind of play harder and sometimes fight a little harder, and just kind of discover what their own limits are. And then you asked where we are. We're currently in Highland, California. But we kind of have a piece of our hearts a little bit of everywhere, including Peru, which is where our first son was born.
Wow, no
So
way.
Yeah, he was.
Oh my gosh.
We were full-time missionaries for 5 years in Peru. So
wow.
Yeah, he was born there. So he's our little dual citizenship baby.
What? That is so cool.
Which is hilarious because he's like redhead, these bright blue eyes, and just does not look like a Peruvian at all. So, and that's where we are. And then daily life, we're just kind of getting into a new routine. Judah just started kindergarten.
Wow.
So that's been cool. And so we just kind of wake up early, get going, do breakfast, of course, coffee. And then once I get him to school, then I come home. I work from home.
Awesome.
And I work as an executive assistant from home, which is cool.
Wow.
And my husband is a pastor of a local church here. So we both work home, which is great because we get to, work together, play together, have life together, which is cool. We both love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's us in a nutshell.
Oh, that's so great. Okay, so this is going to be exciting to ask what your story of your journey into motherhood looked like, because it sounds like you guys got started maybe a little bit later in your marriage. But tell us about that.
Sure. Okay. So journey is a very appropriate word to use. When we first started trying, it was, really early into our marriage, and it just wasn't happening. We just weren't getting pregnant. And of course, when you're trying for a baby, months feel like years. And then the months did turn into years. And it was just really hard. It felt kind of hopeless sometimes, but we never really lost hope. We were just praying and trusting God, because at one point we both felt like God had told us, like, you will have a family. And so along the way, like, we know there's a ton of great medical options out there, especially when it comes to pregnancy, but neither of us ever got tested for anything. Like, that was just our personal choice. We just kind of felt like we would trust in that promise that God had given us about a family. So we were like, whatever that looks like, whatever the timing was. And we had no idea at the time, of course, that the timing would be 7 years.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and it's hard. It's hard when, all your friends start having babies, and it just kind of feels like everywhere you turn, someone's pregnant.
Wow.
And really, I mean, I think anyone who's ever gotten married can testify to this. Like, as soon as you say I do, it seems like the question is, when are you going to have
Oh,
kids?
totally.
And that never goes away.
Oh.
It's crazy. And then when we lived in Peru, the question wasn't, when are you going to have kids? But people would approach me and say, how many children do you have? So that was hard, because then, you'd have to go in and explain, like, oh, we don't have any kids. And then they're like, oh, why? Because especially since I at the time was around, like, I think I was like between 23 and 25. They're like, what? Because, they start having kids really early, start having families really early. And so that was just hard. Yeah. But then in 2012, we found out we were pregnant with our first. And again, this was in Peru. And pregnancy in another country and birth in another country, it wasn't something I'd processed. It just wasn't on my radar, I guess, when you think about having kids. So we, thankfully we had a really great midwife, and midwives are not common in Peru. You go to the doctor, and that's what you do. But she thankfully spoke English. But there was still kind of that barrier, because English was not her first language.
Oh my gosh.
And so there were language barriers. And then you start to really figure out, like, what's important, because we were in a third world country. It's not like you could just go down to wherever and do the baby registry. So you're like, okay, so what's really important and what's not? And so yeah, that whole thing. And then of course, we were both, we were in another country, so we were both away from our families, and that was kind of hard, especially being our first baby. And it was hard for them too. You don't expect that this is the way your life is gonna go.
Yeah.
So we all had to really process what that was, in the midst of just being crazy excited that it took us 7 years, and here we are, we're finally pregnant.
Wow.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that was Judah, and I can't say, I didn't have anything to compare it to at that time. I felt like it was a mostly easy pregnancy. And then the last 2 weeks of the pregnancy, we went in for one of our scans, and they're like, he's breached. So now this beautiful natural plan that you have has become a C-section.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It was crazy. So yeah, all expectations, all hopes, everything I thought I wanted and knew went out the window with my first child.
Wow.
So yeah, that was kind of the push into motherhood, if you will, for me.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. So, and then, so, we have the two. So between Judah and Titus in 2014, we found out we were pregnant again. And I ended up on November 28th of 2014 having a miscarriage. So that, again, just kind of a new aspect of pregnancy. And I was 14 weeks when I went into labor and delivered. I say delivered. We always treated it like a pregnancy. The doctor explained it to us. He spoke English, but again, this is all in Peru again. So he spoke English, but there was still um, it was like he had a hard time locating some of the words in English. And it's hard enough processing that someone's telling you,
Oh my
hey,
God.
your baby's gone.
Oh,
But then through his broken English, we were just kind of like, so what's really happening? And the closest thing we can relate it to, I believe the scientific term for it or medical term is called a blighted ovum.
okay.
So basically what happens is you get pregnant, everything happens, you get pregnant, but somewhere around 10 weeks, your body no longer recognizes okay, well, inside the body no longer recognizes pregnancy. However, your body is still like, your tummy's still growing and things are still happening like you're pregnant.
Wow.
So when they actually go to do the sonogram, they see nothing, which was, again, even weirder like that. I guess if you're
Wow.
going to think about a miscarriage or something, you would expect like something, and there was nothing. And so we
Wow.
were just, again, trying to process like,
Holy
what is this?
cow.
I know it was a really hard time. And then so 2 weeks after we heard that news, my body went into labor, and through that process, I almost died,
Oh my gosh.
because I know I hemorrhaged. I was in the bathroom. I was just like, this is just weird. Like, I'm okay. I expect something, but like I'm bleeding a lot. Like, what's happening? So we called doctor, and they're like, well, keep an eye out. And at some point, I just passed out.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and so oh gosh, that was just a scary time, for
Wow.
sure. They ended up having to do, I didn't know it, but they were doing an emergency DNC and spent a few days in the hospital. And so that was our second
Oh
pregnancy.
my gosh.
Yeah. And then in 2015, we made it back to the States, and ended up again pregnant with Titus, our third, and he was born on September 5th, Labor Day of 2016.
Wow.
So yeah, and they've again, like I said, this journey is the right word.
Yeah.
So with Titus, I ended up with preeclampsia,
Oh my
and I
gosh.
spent a solid 42 days in the hospital
Oh my
before he was
goodness.
born. None of my pregnancies were the same.
Wow.
So, but he's here, he's healthy, he's 2 years old. So,
Oh
but
my
yeah, that's
gosh.
my motherhood.
Wow,
Kind of
girl.
crazy,
That's,
but it's
yeah.
mine.
That's incredible. Now, like, yeah, I'm like, I have like all these questions like buzzing in my
I
mind.
know, I'm sorry. I just kind
No,
of go.
no, I love it. That's so good. I really appreciate you even, sharing your pregnancy with the miscarriage and everything. Like, that's
Oh,
a hard
sure.
place, I'm sure.
Hmm.
But like, okay, so I guess where I think I want to start is like, what was kind of your emotional process like with being in Peru? Like you're saying it was your first kid after 7 years of trying and
Hmm.
away from family. Like obviously there has to be some grace on like being in a place that's so far from familiar. But can
Yeah.
you kind of share like what your process was? What were some of the things that you did to kind of process through that emotion? Like,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. Yeah, so part of being in Peru, part of our role of being there was we were part of a community that we call Oikos. And it was this amazing community of missionaries, some Peruvian. Our leaders, Mark and Anna, are from England. And then, of course, Sean and I, we were from the States. We also had another girl, Nancy, from the States. And then we had Steve and Lily from Canada. We were literally like this international
Wow.
group and this community. And we all lived within, a few blocks of each other. And this was just our special community.
Mm,
And I have to say, like, that having that central location and those people and those solid relationships in our lives is absolutely what got us through.
mm.
Um, of course, we would have loved to experience this, with our families, our blood families. But we felt like God really gave us a lot of grace and in providing
Mm.
that family for us at that time.
Wow.
Anna and Mark had kids. They had 3 boys. Anna had actually, I know she wouldn't mind me sharing this. She actually does a blog about her miscarriages too, but she
Oh,
had actually
wow.
experienced that. And so she was there literally
Mm.
holding my
Oh my
hands
gosh.
as I'm, laboring through this miscarriage.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, emotionally, that's how we got by, just
Wow.
having that
Yeah.
community surrounding us,
That's
through the
amazing.
pregnancy, through the miscarriage, through all of it,
Mm.
honestly. Yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful time in our lives that we miss very, very much.
Mm. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that
Hmm.
community is a running theme in
Oh,
the
I bet.
people I talk to, and I can totally relate to it. But it is, I mean, I can't even imagine how important and vital it would be in a situation like yours. So that is really
Yeah.
powerful.
We were
Wow.
all from somewhere else. I mean, even
Mm.
the ones, our leaders who were from Peru, a lot of them came from the jungle, and so everyone was just kind of,
Wow.
we were all just kind of placed, in this area. We were each other's only familiar, basically.
Wow.
So yeah, it was good. It was great to have that
Mm.
solid community for sure.
That's so great. Well, okay, so now you're back in the States.
Yes,
Like, so what does life look like for you guys now? Like, or for you specifically, like, what
sure.
are some of the things that you're passionate about within your motherhood? I don't know, life.
Sure,
You
yeah.
mentioned working, like, just kind of update us on where you're at now and what you're
Okay,
doing now.
yeah. Well, I mentioned a little bit earlier, my husband's a pastor, and that's a big part of, what we're doing here, and really what kind of shapes us here now. And we co-labor in that.
Mm.
I I'm his biggest fan and his biggest supporter, and we do that together. We do life together, really. Um, so that's a lot of our job, I guess, is
Mm-hmm.
the church side of things. And then I mentioned, I'm a working executive assistant here at home. And so that's
Wow.
interesting.
Dang.
There's definitely a fine line, between feeling like I'm doing it and like I'm not doing
Sure,
it with the
totally.
kids around. But yeah, I think part of my passions, music is a huge part of who I am.
Mm.
It always has been.
Wow.
I'm very slowly figuring out like how that plays a bigger part in my life. Um, right now, I lead worship at our church. I
Mm.
was fortunate enough to get to lead worship in Peru, which was so
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
And I've just started playing around with what is singing outside of the church mean.
Sure.
I'm really interested in maybe recording some music. Um,
Wow.
life has kind of gotten in the way, and also a little bit of courage.
Oh, girl, I get you
um,
there for sure.
yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm very passionate about music. I'm huge into, celebration and hospitality. Those are both very much a core part of who I
Mm.
am. I love throwing parties. I love hosting people in our home.
Mm.
Just celebrating people. I feel like people don't get celebrated enough, I guess. And I,
Mm.
I want to make sure they feel, loved and
Wow.
celebrated. And also, as a mom, this is just kind of an interesting stage for me, because, now my baby is 2, which,
Mm.
I will always call him my baby, but he's not really baby anymore.
Mm.
And being a mom has always been like the goal.
Mm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
that thing I want, that thing I need, that's going to make me who I am.
Mm.
And I have experienced so many aspects of pregnancy, so many aspects of motherhood. And now my children are kind of becoming these little independent people.
Wow.
And I'm
Yeah.
noticing they're doing less and less. Of course, we're here, we're their nurturers, we're going to take care of them. But I'm just in this season kind of rediscovering, okay, who am I as
Mm-hmm.
an individual now that my every waking moment isn't consumed with all things baby,
Yeah.
coming out of that baby stage. So, I think here in the next 6 months, year, a few years, we'll kind of rediscover like
Mm.
who who am I and what are my passions? What do I like?
Yeah, totally. That's
What does that
amazing.
mean? So yeah,
Wow. It is a journey, eh? Like,
it is
oh,
For sure.
So, what
For
are
sure.
some of the things that you do to stay inspired with like
Hmm.
managing your time with being a working mom and also
Yeah.
like kind of rediscovering these passions of yours and like tending to those places too?
Sure, sure. So in the day to day, I'll be honest, some days it feels like I'm just kind of surviving.
Mm, yeah, that's fair.
Um, but this year, we chose to focus on a word for our family, and that word is flourish.
Mm,
So we've been kind of focusing on that word, figuring out what does that mean, because having been more of a nomadic family, I mean, we've lived here, we've lived there, we've lived in
right.
another country, we've kind of been all over the map. And this is really the first season in a long time that we've been in one place.
Mm,
So a big part of my day is, of course, managing Titus while I'm working from home, but there's definitely a fine line. And I said this earlier, just managing my time well and not.
yeah.
Part of it is, I think for some reason I have this fear that I'm gonna like miss something or make the wrong decision. And so I set myself up to miss a lot of the day when I go, oh no, am I gonna do this or am I not gonna do
Mm,
this? Part of working from home, part of the challenge is I work from home so that I can do things with my kids, so that
mm,
I can do errands in the middle of the day, so that I
yeah.
can clean my house when I want to. There's 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 a reason I work from home and I get to
Mm,
spend that time with my kids. But I worked in, an office for many, many years before we were in Peru. And so I think I still have this like tie to my computer, like, no, I have to sit here and wait for
oh,
the work to come in,
totally. Totally.
So on the days where I do manage my time well, we have a lot more freedom and I can enjoy my kids and we
Mm,
do our thing without getting trapped into this like, what if I miss something?
totally. Oh,
And
that's
the
great.
great thing about this day and age is I have a phone in my hand, I've got a
Yes.
watch on my wrist, like it goes with me, like I'm not gonna miss anything.
Totally.
So yeah,
Oh,
that's
that's great. So, what are some ways that you take care of your heart as a mama? And
sure.
yeah, like what are some practical things that you do to just take care of yourself?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier worship.
Mm,
That's like a huge part. And of course, there's many ways to worship, but for me, it's through music. It's just a huge part of who I am. And just no matter where I am, music kind of always brings me back to center, I
mm,
guess.
totally.
Um, Also, I just recently, well, recently, since April, I've started going to the gym at 5 a.m.
Dang.
I know.
That's
I was
amazing.
always one of those people who was like, no. And
Yeah.
for a year, I tried to work out at home and I'm like, I'm going to get up, I'm going to do it. And
Yeah.
for a year, that did not happen. So I was like, you know what? This is the only time of day that everyone is sleeping and I literally just have time for me.
Wow.
So on those
Props.
mornings, yeah, thank you. Some days I'm like, really, you're doing this?
Oh.
I honestly, I have to get up at the first alarm. Otherwise, I won't do it. So
Oh, wow.
but on those mornings, so I do my thing at the gym, and then I find that on those mornings when I come home, everybody's still asleep, the house is still quiet. I have just enough time for like one cup of coffee. It's quiet, nobody's up. And on those mornings when I'm intentional about that time, I just find that I'm a kinder person.
Mm. Heyo.
um, yeah, right. So, and just taking care of, you said taking care of yourself. I think the gym is part of it, but I I think I can speak, or at least I speak for me,
Mm.
but maybe it will resonate with someone that when you go through pregnancy and your body does this thing where you have this miracle of life inside you,
Mm.
but then the baby's gone, he's
Yeah.
out and you're like, yay, I get to enjoy this baby. But then you're like, but I'm stuck with this body.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took me a long time to really process like what it meant to love myself and
Mm.
love my body for what it had done and
So good.
not focus on, my external. But then when I did start focusing on me time, the
Mm.
gym, and then, everything just kind of started meshing, I guess, in my brain.
Yeah.
And I was learning like, okay, you can love yourself right now, even though you're not where you're quote unquote supposed to be,
Yeah.
I learned to love myself no matter what I looked like, and it made me feel healthier
That's
on the
so
inside as well as
good.
the outside.
Oh,
So
I love that.
yeah, and then just having fun with my family. Like we love spending time together. We love going to the beach, and we just we just got Disney passes. So
Yes. I saw
we
your
were like, you know
pictures.
what?
Oh,
If we're
jelly.
gonna live here, we're gonna have these.
That's that is
So
a
I mean,
great
Disney's good for the
investment.
heart, right?
Yes, so good. I love that. Oh, it's so good. Those are good words. That just popped in my head the other day. I watched this documentary called Embrace.
Hmm.
This woman, Taryn, I forget her last name. She like created this documentary about like self-love and loving your body where it's
Oh,
at. It's really powerful. Like I'll link it to the show notes if anyone's interested in watching it. But
yeah.
you may have seen it. She put up this like before and after picture on Facebook that went viral of her
Uh-huh.
before as like a bodybuilder and like a bathing suit like
Oh, I may have seen this.
yeah, and then the
Yes.
other one she's like naked but covered, but it's
Yeah.
after she's had kids and like she's just like more curvy and
Hmm.
that was the after picture and she's just saying like I love my body as it is. And anyways, this documentary is like so powerful. I'm all about it right now, like just the because it's so
Yeah.
true, like as moms, like we are introduced to this totally different body after
Hmm.
birth, and it's so
Hmm.
powerful to like love yourself through that process. Because I feel like if you can love yourself at that place of like being in
Hmm.
a different body, sometimes like it's just so feels so foreign, then it's going to be a lot easier to love yourself when you're where you're quote unquote you want to be or whatever. So
Right. Exactly.
but
Yeah, for sure.
anyway, small plug for that documentary. It's so good, seriously. Okay, so have you experienced mom guilt, and if so, what are some things you do to overcome it?
Oh my goodness, yes. Yes. So with my first, especially with my first, I really struggled with what other people thought about me as a mom. Um, and I look back on it now and I laugh because it's just so silly. But if anyone approached me with advice, especially if it was about something I was currently doing,
Mm-hmm.
I took it as a critique instead
Mm-hmm.
of just their thoughts on like how it could be helpful. And it really like it would hurt me down in my soul. I would be
Mm-hmm.
like, why did you just see me doing this thing and feel you needed to approach me about
Mm-hmm.
it? Like, I don't understand. Um, and so for some reason I just had in my head like, no, I was made to be a mom. Like I can do it. I can do it all.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't, or if someone gave me advice, it felt like I was failing.
Mm.
And so I learned a lot during that first season and kind of carrying into my next child. Just more about just letting it go and embracing, the mom community. And I also thought about my own heart. If I often, this worked for me, or, do this, try this. But my heart is never in the wrong place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, hey, this was helpful. Maybe it will help you too,
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, oh, that's probably how everyone else is approaching me too. Not to guilt me or telling me I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it wrong, but to help. Okay.
Yeah, that's so
So
good.
yeah, that was probably my biggest I hate to say issue, but just
No,
mom guilt
yeah.
thing is just like feeling like I was being critiqued.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
That's good. I totally can relate to that. I was like, and a lot of times I feel like we need to give ourselves a break though, because a lot of it I feel like is hormonal stuff that you
Oh, for
like aren't even like
sure.
you don't even realize until you're like postpartum, like after that, like I don't know, even after a year it feels like I'm finally like,
Yeah.
oh, that was just like a lot of hormonal like. But yeah, I can totally relate to the thing of like, excuse me, I'm doing my best here, like I'm not gonna, I don't know, like rejecting the advice sometimes. And now I'm
Mhm.
like, dang,
Mhm.
like I totally get that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can relate there. That's good. Okay, so I love to talk about legacy as well.
Sure.
And what are some things that kind of come to mind when you think about the legacy you want to leave for your kiddos?
Yeah. So our biggest hope is just that they would have a relationship with Jesus.
Mm,
Um, but aside from that, well, I kind of intertwined with that. We just want to leave with them the importance of loving people.
mm.
We actually have a family motto,
Oh, that's so
and it's
cool.
our motto is we are a crazy in love family that love people like crazy.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So we really, really want to just instill in our kids, getting to know who people really are, and maybe not just as the world sees them or how they hear a judgment, but really looking at their heart. And we want them to know that everyone deserves a chance to be loved,
So
and not
good.
just loved, but loved unconditionally, like past their actions, and really just to feel as important as they are, and to feel safe enough to share their story. Like, okay, if they're having a hard time, how did they get there? Like, what is their story? A lot of times we just look at, where people are and how they got there, and shame on them, they're not getting out of it. You know what I mean? But we want them to, truly learn how to befriend people, and become someone that people can rely on, and that things are just things. But their relationships with people, I guess, will just show them how they can experience life and God in a different way.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So probably just more about relationships and people. Yeah.
Yes, good stuff. That's so good. Okay, well, I like to end with some fun questions. So,
Hey, this is all fun.
hey, it is. You're right. You're right. So, the first one would be, do you have a favorite product for yourself or for your kids that you are loving at this moment?
Um, at this moment, let's see. I more went to like younger kids. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
actually, you know what? I still use these both with my 2-year-old. So my
Okay.
absolute favorite thing ever, ever, ever was baby wearing.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and so with my first, I used a Moby wrap.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
and I loved that, it's kind of like a swaddle thing, but there's so much fabric.
Yeah, totally.
and, and then with my second, with Titus, I used the Ergo.
Yes.
And I still, when we go to Disney, I take that thing, because when you're
Yes.
standing in line and you're like trying to wrangle a
Oh.
2-year-old, it just doesn't work. So he gets into the Ergo, and I think he goes back into baby mode, which I don't really hate.
Oh, that's
I kind of love it.
sweet.
He just snuggles up, and I'm like,
Oh
yes, I
my
love this.
gosh, that's the best.
And I think the other one would be Passy clips.
Oh
Have you
yeah.
heard of these? Okay.
Yes.
They weren't really popular when I had Judah, but I think they're becoming more
Yeah,
popular.
totally.
But like, oh my gosh, Passies get lost so easy, and you just like clip them on, and they're amazing. Titus still uses a Passy, so we're just like on the Passy
There
clips.
you go.
Even if like now he's to the stage where he doesn't want the clip, he just kind of rips it off.
Yeah.
But it keeps the Passy from just rolling away.
Totally, totally.
So yeah, Ergo and Passy clips would be my answer.
Perfect. All right, and then do you guys have a favorite holiday tradition with your family yet?
We do.
Yay.
So we do only 4 gifts for our kids.
Nice.
And it's something you want, something you need, something to wear, and something to read.
Oh my goodness.
And so they each get 4 gifts, and then, because I mean,
Dude,
family,
yeah.
grandparents, like they get more than
Oh,
enough.
totally.
As long as they get to open something, they're good. But yeah, we just kind of focus on those 4 things for them. So
Oh my
that's one of
gosh.
our favorite traditions, because it really helps us, like, instead of just what is everything on your
Yeah.
list, we get to hone in and say, okay, these are the most important
Oh,
things. This is what we're gonna get.
that's
So
brilliant. I'm totally stealing that. That's so good.
do it. Oh, I think we stole it from Pinterest or something. So
Well, I'll say it's from
yeah.
you. That's
Oh,
so
okay,
cool. And
okay.
it's so funny. I know I've shared this before, so forgive me for those of you who have heard this, but like my family had a tradition where we would get around 4 gifts, but mainly it was like three main gifts because that's what Jesus got when he was born. So I was like, oh my
Oh.
gosh, I wonder if this is going to be the same thing. But we could just use that same thing and like tie it in with the 4 or whatever. That's so great.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a piece of advice you'd give to new mom.
Oh, cut yourself a break.
Yeah.
Oh, we are so hard on ourselves. And I mean, we've talked about this through and through, like, especially the hormones. Like, you
Yeah.
don't realize that you're not yourself,
Yeah.
really. And just coming off of my mom guilt question, like, lean into the help. Use the
Mm.
people around you. If somebody says they want to come over and wash your dishes or let you take a nap, please do it. Please.
Mm.
More for you and for baby, like you'll both be better for it. And then the other big thing I would say is every family is different and every child is different.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing or at least me, and maybe again, someone can resonate with this, is we get caught up in like, well, that worked for them. What am I doing
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah.
Well, it may be that you're not doing anything wrong, but it
Yeah.
just doesn't work for you or
Yeah.
your child, and that's okay.
Yes.
So not to let yourself feel guilty when something doesn't work for you, even if it's worked for everyone else.
That's great advice. Oh, Amanda, thank you so much for doing this with me. It's been so fun. I
You're
can't wait to
so
share.
welcome.
Oh, so good. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Please share this with a friend if it impacted you in any way, and leave a review on iTunes so other mamas can hear the truth that they are enough and they are doing their very best. Be sure to catch up on what's happening in the Mommispace community every day on Instagram at Mommispace. And you can email me at mommispace@gmail.com for questions or interview recommendations. All my love to you, Mama. You're amazing. See you next week. Just to say that